Hundred years back, Spanish flu, 1919, 1920. The thought that came to us is let's look at our archives. It was 1919, 1920, Tata Steel was up and running. And to our surprise, when we dug out the details from our archives, we realized that whatever were the do's and the don'ts for pandemic 2020 were exactly the do's and don'ts of 1919 and 1920.
Hello everyone, I'm Saurav Roy and welcome to FiredUp by Tata Steel, a podcast series by Tata Steel Limited. We are here today to discuss social impact and CSR, which is a core driver for Tata Steel. And we have with us Mr. Chanakya Chaudhary, former Vice President Corporate Services for Tata Steel Limited and Director of Tata Steel Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Both of us, in many of our conversations, many times when we try to do something together with our teams, have often found that there is a very tangible legacy of social impact that Tata Steel has, Tatas have, and more than inspirational, we've often found it instructive. That informs what we are doing now. What does this legacy mean to you personally, and how it shaped you over here or your whole process?
So I think what you said is right. Tatas have a very, very strong foundation and legacy, which we all started with. Even when I joined in 1988 as a graduate engineer trainee, the first few things that we saw and were told during our induction training program was that community is going to be at the center of everything that Tata Steel will do. Surely we didn't understand it that time. You were just about getting into the system. But as we started moving into the company's different functions, working, etc., we realized that that is how the company operates. Many examples of that, right? But it also shapes individuals like me. And, if I have to look back close to 37 years in the company, many times when we were taking initiative, deciding on projects, that legacy or that vision of the founder shaped our thought of going forward. And I think personally, if I have to look at it, whenever there's been a project or any kind of a discussion, you all always started conversations with who will you benefit, how much will you benefit, what will be the impact of what we are trying to achieve there, and so on and so forth. So I think the legacy given by the founder has been followed very, very aptly by all our founding fathers, subsequent leaders, till it. Absolutely spot on. What we also see is, when we've been looking at this legacy, reviewing it, and trying to learn from it, what also stands out is how there have been times where there have been, there have been unacknowledged processes behind what seems to be, a vague effort, right? And that takes me back to maybe in a Tata Steel sense, not recent history, but in the larger sense, maybe about 60, 70 years back, with the setting up of something called Tata Steel Rural Development Society, and how institutional architectures were set up, respecting the fact that working in community is actually a core competence of the company, has to be a core competence of the company. So your recollections, and then you've been instrumental in the setting up the archives and many things. So your view of the journey from TSR, possibly amongst the first corporate foundation to the country, is that the right interpretation? Yeah. So I think everything in Tata Steel is got a legacy of 100 years plus, if not, somewhere there, because we are good 118-year-old company, and one-off stuff has never been done in Tata Steel. It may start as a one-off, but there were always structures around it. There were always processes around it. Yes, you're right. Tata Steel Rural Development for Society possibly got set up in 1979, which most probably was one of the first. And I know for sure that the Tribal Affairs Ministry of Government of India came much later. Before that, we also had the Tribal Culture Society set up in the 1990s or whatever, 1986, 1986, right? So I think there's always been structure around the work we do because it should not end up as an ad hoc or a one-off kind of a thing. And frankly, if you look at the way our some of our leaders took this initiative, for example, the smallpox eradication program, it was not one-off. You kind of take up the project and then leave it there. You do it as a campaign, which starts small, but then expands as you go up more and more, deeper and deeper, and find that you need to do a lot more than what you decided to do. And I think the legacies of TSRDS, the Tribal Culture Society, and maybe a bit later even the Family Initiative Foundation that was set up, I think all these only tell us that there was a huge amount of thought process, huge amount of structure, and huge amount of planning for setting up the processes so that they run year after year and do good for whatever they were set up for.
Also, for me as a as a as a practitioner in the social impact space, I'm amazed to see that programmatic approaches, like you said, being the norm somewhere maybe in the late 2000s, when even the larger sector, so to say, was figuring out what programmatic approaches might look like. The institutions that we speak about, right, particularly about the tribal culture society, is the back of the governance was it to be. It's not just a society, the foundation, and then you once tell us the story, and number of friends right at the beginning when we were digging when we were wrapped in the pandemic, and how old is the Spanish flu actually informed a century ago. It informed our work. Since you mentioned smallpox, that suddenly brought back that memory to me. If you remember though, so it was very interesting. Thanks for reminding me, because that's a fantastic story. I don't know how many our colleagues are aware of this. So when pandemic hit us in 2020, and we were all grappling in terms of what to be done, and we were touching base with the government of India, health ministry, state governments, and trying to find out through our medical team and etc. etc. And then he saw a news fly saying 100 years back, Spanish flu, 1919, 1920. The thought that came to us is, let's look at our archives. Because 1919, 1920, Tata Steel was up and running. And to our surprise, when we dug out the details from our archives, we realized that whatever were the do's and the don'ts for pandemic 2020 were exactly the do's and don'ts of 1919 and 1920. Maintain distance, wash your hands, hygiene, personal hygiene, etc., etc. And again, through another surprise, the wave 2 of Spanish flu was much more deadlier than wave 1, which happened in even pandemic 2020. What it tells us is that being a 100-odd-year-old company, please look at the archives and the thought processes of our leaders when they dealt with certain situations of this kind, and there's so much of learning within. But I think your question was more in terms of programmatic 2000 plus, or it's post 2000, how we have moved in the CSR space. I think we also reached a stage where banning till early 2000 or even mid of 2000, it was not a mandate. As in 2013, the mandate came. But I think much before that, we started looking at our community initiative programs to see that, again, what is the impact? What is the area where we really need to do more? Which is the area where we need to do less? And I think we had a good set of advisors, external advisors as well as internal, where we looked at some of the impact areas. So I think first things we did was to look at proximate areas. That's right. In terms of operating areas, nearby vicinity areas where what kind of initiatives were required. And some of the areas which could go on year after year after year to have a larger impact. And I think that's where the whole thought process started. If I have to look back the last 20 years, from let's say early 2000 to now 2025, so about
20 odd years, a lot of changes and structural changes have been made in the way we do community engagement and community initiatives. And for right reasons, because I think none of these programs can have an impact at a short duration. Some of these programs need longer time horizons. We also operate in Jharkhand and Lisa, which I think in some way is needs more of support for community development. If you look at KHDIs and you look at the aspirational districts with this two states, I think much more needs to be done. And I think our advisors and our thought leaders have actually taken us to that point where we can look within, we talk to the community champions or the community leaders, and then decide the course for the future. I think about 3 years back, you also had this Future Wax strategy sessions where we looked at what all we had been doing since, let's say, the early 1980s to or 50-year horizon to 2020, 2022, and where can we lead in time. Let's say if to 2030 or 2035, I'm standing and looking back, what is it that I can see today and then bridge that gap in the next 10, 15 years? And I think that has really helped us to kind of bracket stuff as no regret moves and large bets. And I think our areas of operation needs a lot more of large bets than no regret, right? So I think that has really helped us to carve our thinking and clear our thoughts in terms of the way forward.
I think the first point that we said that when an institution which will continue to do the right thing for the right people in 2035 will need to be an institution who speaks the language of capital and also the language of community. And therefore, it has to be implementing organization. And that, to my mind, was pivotal decision. And they take, all our conversation to the board of the foundation pushes us towards excellence in implementation or a city's communication. What were your thoughts at that point? How have you seen that evolve as implementation mapping?
So I think your question or your statement actually had the answers of what we have been looking at and doing. So one is that yes, when we set out to set up the foundation, which was about 2-3 years back now, right? That's right. But the work started a bit let's say 1 to 3 years before that it was starting. I think one good thing was that we were already looking at something like the signature programs and the proximity program. They have a big proximity program. I think that was giving us a clear mandate in terms of what is required on the ground. And these signature programs, if I start the signature programs or the proximity programs, they all came from discussion with the community. And the conversations of this 9,000 people that you said, that some of them were very straightforward to say, आप कल की बात मत करिए, आप आज की बात करिए. और आज हमें अगर खाने को नहीं मिलेगा, आज हमको अगर हेल्थ नहीं हमारा भी देख सकता है हॉस्पिटल में, तो हम कल जिंदा हैं कि नहीं हमको मालूम है. So and you have a younger population more and more in the rural and the semi-urban kind of space where we operate, and the aspirations are high. They all are connected to the Wi-Fi's and the televisions of the world. They see what is happening in the outside world, but they cannot be a part of it. So there's a huge amount of hunger which needs to be in some way fed. So I think that was on one side with us. The second thing was that can we kind of make a governance process where we pick up these needs, then we plan our programs and projects, and then we can implement them. So if you look at our foundation of Tata Steel, it is very unique, frankly speaking. I've also looked at some of the other organizations, other foundations. I don't think everyone has, or most of them do not have all three elements. Top conversations, being inclusive, getting the ground up of kind of a fact from people, and at the same time, then working out a collaborative way of planning and creating programs, and then going and implement. And you are right, the Tata Steel Foundation Board or the CSR Board Committee of Tata Steel has always looked at the governance process from end to end. That's right, right? they've also given us a mandate that the administrative costs cannot be so high that your actual implementation of or the good work which is happening on the ground gets overshadowed. But as we speak today, and I think my numbers could be long, but I think we have about 1,500 to 1,600 implementing individuals in our foundation. That's right. Many of these come from within the community who understand the requirements. They also have the skill to go and implement. And yes, we also bring in experts from outside, help out designing the programs. I think the whole concept end to end has really helped our Tata Foundation in two ways. One, it ensures that there is impact on the ground, obviously positive, and in some way measure it back to what we started for. So if I'm going to say that I'm going to impact X number of lives, I'm going to impact the household incomes, I'm going to impact the agricultural produce, I'm going to impact the health indicators of individuals or the women, take the Mansi program, and we can talk about it. Then it measures back, saying that this is what we wanted, have we achieved? If no, where is that the lack, where is it lacking, and so on and so forth. And the last piece is about these individuals who go and implement the programs, right? And those are the individuals, I think, who finally stand tall in kind of letting the Tata Steel Foundation get the good name. And that's the second thing which happens is the credibility, which comes in once you do a good job on the ground.
Thank you for bringing out that point on like end-to-end approach for that implementation, from conceptualization to delivery to feedback, and in fact, it's interesting because there's a very different PDCA cycle that works for community work, and I think that's the mandate, and that's what we're living with. Also, the diversity of talent, not just context, the diversity of talent, and sometimes, an organization, we are trying to seed an organization that respects the fact that people who are outstanding on the field, may not be outstanding in the work, but it's important that the organization speaks that language in a holistic sense. But there's enough space for the diversity of talent, and that's something. I mean, you always have a view on that. Any thoughts on?
I think what you say is right. If you look at Tata Steel as a whole, there are many individuals or independent teams who can do so much more in this journey of community initiatives and community. And I deliberately don't want to say volunteers. Okay, sure, I just don't want to bring that in right now. But I think there is an expertise which gets within each individual like you and me. And there are some individuals who want to really go out there and be a part of that journey, right? That's one part. But it may not be necessary that I have an expertise and, I have an expertise, so let me go and do this. So I think there is a kind of a understanding from a community perspective, what do they need? And I think the program that the FiredUp Foundation set up, which is according to me an immersion program, which is called Unlimited, right? Which I remember asking you once that what does it mean? And you said a conversation by the end of which both individuals gain. Yeah, I remember you told me dive the deeper understanding of the subject or the individuals or whatever. So I think that has also in some way, though it's not very mature right now, because I don't know how many people or how many percentage of individuals or teams are actually getting connected to this program. But I know of other corporates who have actually opted for this, and the feedback from them is amazing. And the only feedback in one sentence is that there's a huge understanding post the program of individuals and teams as to what the community is looking for. And also to understand how they live, how they behave, what do they eat, how do they speak, etc., etc.
And the fact that there is intelligence agenda out there, right? I'm not to argue on absolutely.
And I think if what is more like empathy and not sympathy. I don't know whether we discussed this about relations between the two. It's more of empathy that you get into someone else's shoes, understand, and then come back. Come out and go into your own shoes in some way, then decide kaise karna hai, kya karna hai. And I think that has really helped. The other is if you are building the expertise within. And I think a lot of work has happened in the last few years with institutes like the XLRI, many others. Yeah, correct. And I think in some way, we are also building that expertise in these institutes for individuals to, first of all, understand. Secondly, maybe go back to the society and be with them and work alongside. And I think these two things have really shaped the not only the narrative, but I think also that the way forward for these individuals and teams and the community together. I think it's also about getting closer and closer with the community. It's also not about us and them. It's about only all of us together. That's right. Right. And I think this is what this is what the academic partnerships that we are doing is helping us to bridge that gap and bring that, or I can say, shorten the distance between.
Just want to add one point to to the biochar example that you mentioned. I think there are a number of such initiatives that are being worked on right now with the Tata Steel team. What is personally very interesting to me is that if to go back to the point on how you design scheme, if there is an option of completing a project in, let's say, a timeline of X, and it needs a timeline of, let's say, 10% additional time, so the social purpose also takes care of. I find that the other seat is okay to do that additional 10% time breaks to say that, hey, this is the right thing to do. Push comes to shove, the decision falls, this piece, which I think generally something we spoke about happens very organically, so we all talk about it. So I think, but if you look at any of our signature tool, the bigger piece I think all of us have been looking at is sustainability. That's right. Okay. Now let's take education for a moment. So there are various things under education that we keep doing, right? We will do the normal education programs, X number of children back to school. Then we monitor whether they are actually studying, where are they going. Then you will have scholarships to top it off. You have Jyoti scholarships. We also monitor how many girls and how many boys kind of thing. Predominantly, it's more of girls, right? And there's a reason behind. Again, as I would go back to Matsai to madness, because my own personal belief is, if in a household, in a home, the girl child studies, the ecosystem of the home changes for the better, right? So there's a Jyoti scholarship. Then you have something called the Mastiki Pathshala. Then you have residential bridge course program, non-residential, etc. So there's so many things put together and it comes together, right, in education. Then I remember a conversation between the two of us saying that, what happens to these children in Mastiki Pathshala once they reach, let's say, 10th? And I remember a year back, some of our students got into the 10th and matriculation passing. And that's where it cannot end there. It has to be sustainable for them. Right? It's not for us, it's for them. Taking to the point, boy, age are irreversible. Correct. So if I say, okay, this kid has now passed 10, great. I'll pat my back and say, isko matriculation class. How has the life of this kid changed? So they connect to the vocational training. And I'm happy that some 20 odd kids just passed out of Yellowstone or bus 7, they've got selected and they've got jobs and stuff like that. Amazing. But the biggest satisfaction for me personally, as I kind of retire and meet to the world, is the connect that we've been able to have for our children in Indian Institute of Science. I don't know, there was one child who got pre-selected for the finals. I don't know whether he or she he got selected or not finally, but that is the sustainable journey from an education perspective. So it's not about meritorious student getting scholarship, going to 10, going to 12. After that, what? Is it, somewhere we can go around and say that every kid who comes into, or every child who comes into our fold for education has a sustainable future for himself and herself. I think you have a great thing going for, I think, the Tata Scholars. They take them into technical and non-technical lines, post, I think, undergrad, grads and stuff. But we need to keep expanding that base, right? I think everything that we do under the foundation now has a reversibility, sustainability at its core.
And I think that's what to make a change to the society.
Oh, absolutely right. And I was content. I'm also really emotional when I talk about it because the IIC story or a lot of the children who make this navigate this journey don't have a word other than guts. I don't think I won't be able to navigate that journey if life had put me in that position. It's not easy, and
It only takes, sorry, I'm contradicting, but it only takes me back to the statement that we keep doing now then. It's only an issue of opportunity. Or if I did not get the opportunity as a child or as a student, possibly I won't have the city. If that child gets an opportunity, which let's say you bought a Ragwa, he or she will be sitting here. That's what it is. And that's what we change our society was.
look,
That's where
I said I hand. If you were talking of Mansi, the use of technology will be looked at. We try to look at the problem of access.
correct.
When we started looking at it, there were two issues. One is the physical difficulty of reaching the remotest families. True. Second was the time taking for Indonesian Yadawa. Correct. We chose to attack the latter with technology. So today we have something which is very, it's a large scale technology platform which just attacks time for information. And we have a 98% high risk adjusted rate. Number one. You mentioned bridging programs. So for a large part of bringing children back to school, the effort is anywhere between 6 months to 2 years, just preparing them for school, depending on the initial circumstances. Don't you think so much of this, since we mentioned opportunities, if actually designed to just create a level playing field?
Absolutely. No, I think you also cut short some of the things that you've done in Mansi. So what you likely put it saying that access to reach the individual who needs help, let's say a child, or sorry, a woman who's expecting mother. And second is how much time has it taken for the individual to get the health or the treatment or anything that is required by her. And I think I remember a conversation that Sayya Sati should be given cycles so that they can, instead of walking, they can go by cycle. And then we brought it two-wheelers. I think one of our partners was HDFC, HSBC, where they got these electric two-wheelers. So the physical access got improved by that. And then you had this technology platform where sitting in the office, you'll get alarms. Remember?
No, yeah,
So you get an alarm that this individual needs help and this has not happened or it's happening. And I think technology is surely helping in improving both indicators and also the physical proximity in terms of reaching out. I think we have been moving in this direction, in the right direction, so to speak. I also see that the eastern region where we operate, right? Let's say Odisha, Jharkhand, a bit of Bengal. This also has a huge opportunity. That's correct, right? For many of the other corporates, would be private, public, to step in, supplement what we are doing. And I think the first piece which I talked about in terms of the foundation, creating a credibility for itself, will get us many more partners to supplement the work that we do, whether it's in education, health, or even the trusting programs of agriculture, water, etc. But what I think it also puts a stress on us to do two things. One, our governance mechanisms have to be top to us. And that's why a lot of system audits, a lot of checks and balances have to be brought in. Second is our people have to be. So we need to have people who can actually be on the ground to implement what is coming from the partners. I think the game we are playing is great. We need to just ensure that we understand the governance processes, we follow the governance processes, and we implement with all the zeal and the heart and the soul that we normally have. And I think Eastern region needs a lot of more private and public capital. And with Tata Steel Foundation as a vehicle, there are many I've seen in the last couple of years, right? So you have so many banks which has come in, there's so many other foundations who have come And what I like is that they don't look at Tata name and come in. They do their own due diligence. Absolutely. They do field visits. And that also gives us a lot of insights in terms of where we are not being liked. So in some way, it's a free feedback to us. And the last piece on my side is, we've been here for 100 odd years, 118 years. Should not make us complacent and should surely not make us arrogant. Because I think there are many other foundations across India and across the world who are doing good jobs and fantastic work. And there's a whole bunch of learning which can come from them to us.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. Stay tuned to Fired Up by Tata Steel for many more such interesting conversations.